a few words of thanks, because an awful lot of preparation has gone into this event, both the online event and the event here in IH London. First of all, a big thank you to everybody who's come here today or is joining in online. Thank you. It's made it a real privilege for us that you've joined us, and we're very, very grateful. Thank you to Steve Brent, the CEO of the Trust, who is our host today, and Justin Vollmer, Director of IH London. Richard Bradford, Marketing Director, who has done an enormous amount to get this working as it should work. Mark James, Stuart Edge, and from International House World Organisation, Lucy Horsfield with her team, in particular Alison Sturrock, who's been a great source of help in the preparations. Sean Wilden, who's been looking after the technical aspects and been very, very active in all the online events that take place twice a year in the International House World Network. Neil McMahon, who's not here, he's in Buenos Aires. In fact, I've never actually met Neil, but I've only ever seen him on a screen. He always seems to be sitting at a screen, which, well, one day I actually hope I'll meet him, because he's quite a... Well, thank you very much, Neil, for all your help. Neil and Sean, these are the digital people for International House World. And thanks, special thanks to Heike Philp, who's responsible for the online streaming, and a colleague who I believe is called Nigel. I didn't hear what his other name was, but I know it's Sydney, and I don't know whether he's in Sydney or whether he's Nigel Sydney or whether that's Sydney. Nigel Russell in Sydney. Thank you very much. Thanks also to our speakers yesterday, Chris Ozog, David Petrie, Jonathan Spalton, Pete Gibson, Eva Kislikova, Hannah Pinkham, and Jennifer Dobson and the IH Cordoba team. I saw some of the sessions yesterday, not all of them, but I know that it was an incredible success. And our speakers today, Scott Thornbury, Jeremy Harmer, Maureen McGarvey, Adrian Underhill, Martin Parrott, and Gavin Dewdney. And last but not least, Brita Haycraft. And this leads me into a big thank you to Brita. Brita is, as you know, the co-founder of International House, which began in Cordoba and has affiliated EFL schools all over the world. We all owe John and Brita an enormous debt of gratitude for creating the Accademia Britannica so many years ago in Cordoba, 60 years ago, for coming back to the UK and creating International House London. We're grateful for training so many of us. We're grateful for the fact that you created this astonishing network of schools and creating this extraordinary sense of professionalism, which is shared by everybody in ELT today. So our greatest thanks are to Brita and to John. And I'd like to introduce Brita now, who's going to talk, our last talk of the day, EFL teacher training the IH way. Thank you very much.
This is the...
That's right, that's to move it forward. I think it's that one. Yeah.
Okay.
So, right hand to move it forward.
Let me just... That's it, yeah. Well, hello. I'm privileged to be here. I'm just as privileged as you are to International House, which was created by so many people together. And well, I'll jump straight into the text, if I can find it. the teacher training course. The point is, in 1962, you needed no degree or teaching experience to join the course. It was cheap. I put down here 8 guineas, but Adrian was saying 6 guineas. Well, it was certainly cheap, and it was short, just 2 weeks. But it had a completely novel saying that was live practice teaching every afternoon. So, and the course started with 3 hours in the morning and 2 hours practice teaching in the afternoon. And I don't think the applicants knew what they were in for, but it turned out to be very, very useful. And of course, our own students were the volunteers. Our own students from all these countries were their volunteer guinea pig students. So John taught language analysis the first 2 hours, and also classroom techniques like how to seat the students, not to ask questions in predictable order, to make them, to keep the learners alert in case the question, they couldn't sort of go to sleep. They certainly couldn't go to sleep. The students, when they were taught by IH, I don't think they ever do, but taught by IH teachers. And the third hour teacher, which was me or Martin Joseph, who was a teacher who'd been a Cambridge graduate, some of the Cambridge graduates, some of our first teachers were from Cambridge because they had come to Cordoba for our Easter course for foreign students. So John had the idea of international house, almost the second year we were in Cordoba. And the third hour teacher also did pronunciation, 3 hours a week, and vocabulary, prepositions, adverbs, etc., details for the other 2 hours. And then also the seating during the teacher training course, because the tutor and the 12 or 14, the 14, I think 14 or 15 trainees sat in a circle round the table, and they could smoke and bring in their coffee. So, and they were on first name, so it was egalitarian, and it relaxed them. And then that first afternoon, the trainees divided into 2 groups, or 3 groups, because depending on how many there were, and walked into separate classrooms where the guinea pig students sat waiting, and one after the other. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah, thank you. And one after the other, the trainees taught these volunteer students the language point allotted to them as best as they could. And the guinea pigs were delighted to get short English lessons from 6 different teachers for free. So the trainees were relieved, and they must have had to be inventive. They were faced with students from all these different languages, so they couldn't translate for them. They had to that's really where all the techniques, many of the techniques were born, because you had to mime, or anyway, that come to that. And so John's plan for the teaching practice worked. His formula, I'd say the teacher training course is like a formula, and nobody else has tried to copy it. it's only an international house or through those who go for the teacher training courses around the world have this formula. The students came back the next day, and the trainees got a bit more confident day by day, and they also made friends with our students, which delighted the students, and they'd sometimes go to the pub with them, our pub. So students, people who do practice lesson, teachers practice lessons today in London, they're delighted because they get to speak more English outside the lessons than if they just go to an ordinary language course. So each trainee's short lesson was observed by the tutor and also by the fellow trainees. As you know. So, and the third hour tutor observed the other group of trainees' practice lessons. And when TP ended, we called it TP, and students had gone, tutor and trainees got together to discuss each lesson, and which we called the Postmortem. But I don't know which went down best, which mattered most to those trainees, hesitant trainees on the training course, to hear the positive comments first before the criticism, and which meant that they didn't feel so scared about teaching the next day, or hearing the feedback as soon as the TP finished without having to wait till the next day, or the fact that the trainees too gave their views, that the tutor would ask the trainees, what did you think of that lesson? What did you think? So give them, and that meant that there was no favoritism on it. I don't know, those of you who've done the course, if you agree, but they were some of the most insignificant-looking personalities on the course became the top teachers, in no time at all. So there wasn't a particular type that became teacher trainer. And afterwards, of course, the trainees went off to the bar, because the school had a bar, as had been mentioned, and the bar is essential in any IH school, and prepared for next day's TP. And then the second week of the teacher training course, the TP tutors changed groups to observe each other's trainees. And this was essential so that they could agree on the grade that they would award to the trainees at the end of the course. So it wasn't a casual course, it was carefully planned. And I'd call it, if you agree, they nurtured the trainees. It was always friendly. So lateness was very rare, and few trainees fell ill or dropped out. So it ran smoothly from the... This is the prospectus from 1960. I don't know if it was the first one, but it was in Shaftesbury Avenue, summer 1964. So it was, we didn't have time for any prospectuses for 1962. And I know that, well, I'll find out later how much it cost. But yeah, another ingredient or another aspect of the course was to sit in. The TT course was short but intensive. The trainees also had to and wanted to sit in to regular classes and to pick up more ideas. And after that course ended, or either at 9 o'clock in the morning, if that course started at 12, or in the afternoon after the TP finished at 4 o'clock. So John, well, all the teachers in the school often had a few sitters in at the back of the class. And John thought it important for trainees to observe normal classes, the way student doctors observe doctors in a teaching hospital. He wanted to create a teaching hospital, if you like, or a teaching. And that's what he did, because it wasn't all right. But sitting in became the norm in IH. But this, again, was only possible because the teacher training course took place inside a very busy school. You know, it became like a great big engine, but a very happy engine. Now here's a certificate issued in 1964, awarded grade 3. That meant that they wouldn't have got to teach in IH straight away, but they could then do the Delta later on, and then they'd come in. But so there you can see what it grammar, phonetic tuition. Yeah, it speaks for itself. No comments. So although she got grade 3, it says she wrote excellent exams. Excellent in grammar and pronunciation, and she has unusually good grasp of this. Her methods are quite clear, but she reads further. You know, she needs further. So it's considerate. It isn't just thumbs down. You know, it's wishing her good luck teaching, and I don't know whether there's nobody old enough to have had a certificate like that. And it's signed by Martin Joseph, who was a brilliant teacher and teacher trainer, and then he really wanted to become a jazz pianist and did so in Italy. And John, yeah, you know, grade 1, outstanding, grade 2, good, grade 3, reasonable, grade 4, below average. Oh, yeah. So that was the next step. IH, of course, employed the grade 1s immediately, but also grade 2 people of each course to teach for us in London, or to send them to affiliated schools in Lisbon, where an ex-teacher of ours had gone to establish a school, and still thriving, you know, expanding, etc. And also back to Cordoba, of course, and Huelva and Cadiz in Andalusia, where which went on, which is thriving to this day with 2 schools in Cordoba, and you know, it could compete with Stukely Street, except that Stukely Street hasn't got the mosque or the little streets, or the dancing and all the rest of it. Well, it's got Covent Garden, which isn't bad. Right, and so many new teachers, this is very important, many new teachers came up with new classroom ideas which were picked up by fellow teachers and also absorbed in the training course. So it sort of fed back into the teacher training course. And teachers could also opt to be supervised by teacher trainers, if they wanted, to become teacher trainers themselves. And some of you may remember that. By 1970, at least a fifth of our teachers in London also teacher trained. And a year or two after teaching abroad, teachers would be back with us in London and become teacher trainers themselves. And of course, each course meant that the schools could expand and could employ more teachers and take more students. So it was wonderful the way as I'm saying, the teacher training course benefited the schools, just as the schools benefited the teacher training course. And the first colonial teacher training department opened in Rome in the late 60s. And then there was also one in Paris, and you could train, but in the 70s, you could train in IH Paris, IH Alexandria. Is Scott here? I think, I remember you could teach in IH Cairo, and in IH Lisbon. But Barcelona hadn't yet sort of blossomed, it was waiting in the wings, and it began in the 70s. If anybody is, we can look it up to see even Barcelona. Cass. Yeah. Yeah. So IH teacher training courses soon multiplied, and the TT course, the teacher training course, and the school, the IH school, were a mutual benefit to each other, as they still are. The first TT course was repeated in 1962, and it soon ran every month. And then a parallel afternoon course started, and a part-time evening course over 12 weeks. By the mid-1960s, all our teachers were trained, except, of course, the first teacher trainers themselves, John, me, Martin Joseph, Roger Gannon, Rodney Forward, and some others, who were born to be teacher trainers. But it helped. It was very helpful that all the students were from different nationalities, because you had to become inventive. Within 2 or 3 years, several teacher trainers became teacher trainers themselves, like Anthony Skirm and Jennifer Coots, who I think trained Georgie, and George, and you, and Judy, and then Georgie, of course, went on to train Liz Sauce, etc., etc., etc. There's a whole genealogy. That's great. And Lynn Hutton, who is now called Lynn Coleman, married kid, trained in 1965 and was appointed our first TT, Teacher Training Director of Studies, only the year after. And the teacher training course extended to 4 weeks pretty soon. But so it just shows John wasn't afraid of launching into new enterprises, and I think it's the same. It's been the same every year. But all our students were taught by trained teachers who never stopped thinking of new ideas. Our weekly teachers' meetings in the Thursday lunch break were well attended, not least because of free sandwiches from Salvatore, but also because nobody wanted to miss any new teaching idea being demoed. There was each teacher training meeting, the most important part of it, any new ideas, And I remember Sue Lake, who was only about 19, and she became a very early teacher, holding up a box and rattling it about. And she asked us all to think what could be inside. So everyone guessed wildly, it can't be a biscuit. It could be a key, or it could be a coin. And, and she said, very good, that's something I tried out in class to teach the conditional, And many other things happened in the teacher training meeting. So, yes, how did the IHTT teacher training courses come about? Well, John has described the procedure in several articles in Babel in London. But Shaftesbury Avenue was a very fortunate find. I found it, I'm glad to say, while John was in Finland. But we only got it when John came back from Finland, and there was a snippet in the Daily Express about John Haycraft teaching the president of Finland, who was going to come on a state visit to London. And when we showed that to the agents, we got it immediately. But the rent was extremely cheap, £25 a week. But the lease had to be renewed every 6 months. So we were only sure. And we stayed there 18 years. And it had lots of space. Have you got a picture of? Well, it was a corner building, and it was completely empty when we got to. So it had the first floor, was occupied, but we got the second floor, lovely corner flat, lots of rooms, and then there were empty floors above. So John had new floors as the school expanded, and this is why we could have the teacher training courses in the school, because there was space. And he's written about that himself. And another reason was there was no training course to teach adults who paid to learn English in London, and there was no teaching practice course which had students with different mother tongues. So that inspired the teachers to try out lots of ideas. The only existing teacher training course was at the Institute of Education, which lasted a year. Well, we couldn't wait a year, and we couldn't afford, students couldn't afford to pay for a course. It cost a lot more than 8 guineas to go to the Institute of Education. And they had no practice teaching except 2 months in Barcelona, where they all spoke Spanish. So that was it. And they were sort of locked in ancient procedures and not into experimenting, which John suggested him. He approached them, but they said no way. But that's another story. Later in the 80s, we actually seconded one of our teacher trainers to go, and Martin Parrott. Were you the first one?
No, but I was one of them.
Yeah. So for a whole year, and a lot of Institute of Education, we learnt more in 4 weeks than in a whole year. So, if it hadn't been for the Shaftesbury Avenue building, I don't think it would have happened. But that's really the end of my talk about the teacher training course. Of course, we all know how it's blossomed. But I must finish with the openness and friendliness, because it started in Cordoba. Every adult school should have a bar. That started in Cordoba, where teachers and students can speak English, or whatever foreign language you're learning. Every classroom should be interesting, and the classrooms were small in Cordoba. Well, they were always small because we couldn't afford a large classroom, except when we got to speak at Piccadilly. But a lot of people in your own schools, you know that classrooms size was very important. And it should be interesting, the classroom. So I want to thank Cordoba for teaching us, for showing us how wonderfully friendly it can be in the school there. And thank all of you who've taught or teaching in it for bringing creativity into the school. Thank you.
Wonderful talk, fabulously interesting, full of nostalgia, full of history, a really interesting talk. Is there anybody who's got any questions they'd like to ask Brita?
There was one online. Was International House started purely as a teacher training centre then, not a language centre?
I'll just repeat that. Was International House started as...
to train teachers rather
was
than to teach language?
Was it started to teach language as well as to teach trainers?
No, it was started to teach students or adult students in Cordoba. Our first two classrooms were two little rooms that gave onto a patio, and but it was the teacher training started in London when we moved to Shaftesbury Avenue. And, of course, near Piccadilly Circus, students just flowed into the school. And so we needed teachers immediately. And to see if they were any good, John started his teacher training course. Luckily.
Thank you very much.
There is another question online. Brita, a question from Damien Ria. Brita, how does it feel to see what IH has become today?
Brita, what does it feel to see what IH has become today?
Well, I feel incredibly happy about it, because it's gone from strength to strength, and it's also expanded enormously. And each school is so creative. What you said about the internet school, the net languages, it's fascinating. And teachers seem to be happy when you walk into a school. There's reception, and teachers are very welcoming and happy and friendly with each other.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How would you see the next 60 years of International House?
Huh?
How do you see the next 60 years of International House?
I think it'll go online, but it'll invent all sorts of other techniques, where you can talk personally. Although I think learning a language, you benefit from being in a class rather than it's just one-to-one. And I hope that they'll become more interested in better spoken English, because that's a bit of a sideline. No, it'll amaze everybody. I think.
Thank you very much. Well, that's the end of our celebration. Brita, thank you so much for that wonderful talk.
No, but thank you for asking.
Adrian reminded me of a comment he made in a talk he did at EFL last year of Kurt Lewin. And the quote you used, Adrian, was this: when people are aligned in their purpose, and when the gap between values and behaviours closes, what people experience is ease. And that's what I think most of us feel about working and being with International House. And that's what you and John created for us. Thank you so much.